Okay, we're live now, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this live stream Constitution and Members Development Committee meeting today. I'm going to chair the meeting today because Councillor Hobson isn't feeling too well. So can we start off? Can we have any apologies for absence, please?
I have apologies from Councillor Brian Hubbard and Councillor John Hobson.
Thank you. Any more?
Chair, I believe Councillor Saunders, because I'm substituting for him.
All right.
Yeah, and Councillor Wright.
And Councillor Wright. You get that, Joanne?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Right. Declarations of interest. Has anybody got any declarations of interest? I take that. That's a negative. Thank you. Number 3, the minutes of the Constitution and Members Development Committee held on the 10th of December 2021. Could I have somebody to move those as a true and proper record?
Great, Chair.
We've got a second there? Is that okay, Linda? Yes. Thank you. All those for yes? Yes. Number 4, a verbal update, a review of the Constitution. And this is going to be a verbal update from Andrew Glover. Unfortunately, Andrew's got to leave at 30:30, so I'll ask him to start his presentation now, and hopefully he'll get done by 30:30. Andrew, are you there?
Thanks, Chair. Afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to share some very brief slides just to support what we're going to run through. So Democratic Services asked for our view on this around a month ago. You will all be much more familiar with the Constitution than I am, but I've now read it, and in summary, it's 66,000 words. It's across 230 pages, so it's a very substantial document. And while some of the language used within it, needs to be legally watertight for governance reasons, other sections could certainly be made more simple to understand, I believe. It's important to stress that my team are by no means, the legal and governance experts in the room, but what we can do is help to simplify sections, I believe, and look at the way that it's presented. And I think there's a good case to be made for certainly looking at the first 40 pages of the current document, which covers the main 18 articles. I think what we could produce would effectively be a summary or an introduction to the Constitution, which in effect would be what the Council does and how it works. As it says on the slides there, it could focus on the different roles and structures, the decision-making process, and importantly as well, also what residents' rights are and how they can get involved in the process. We would use a standard approach, really, where we would take a very hard line on plain English. We would aim for a maximum of 15 words per sentence. And I think one option would be that if we try and make this understandable for someone in around about third year of secondary school, 14, 15-year-olds, it would act as almost a beginner's guide, I suppose you could term it. I think we could do that in around 4 pages of a designed A4 document that would include imagery. As I said at the start, this document runs to hundreds of pages. We could look at tackling the entire document. This would be a much longer piece of work, and we would need to work very closely with our legal and governance colleagues, because there would need to be a clear approval process even among officers before it came back to yourselves for consideration. My suggestion would be to look at the summary document first. Look at that initially with some very clear deadlines. Forgive me, I'm not sure how frequently this committee meets, but that's something that we could look to do by the next meeting. I would imagine we could have a draft of that ready for you. And just a final point, really, I think with thinking ahead to next May with the election on the horizon, a refresh summary like this could be a tool that we use to promote involvement in the democratic process. I know that one of the recent changes to the executive, we now have an executive member for political engagement as well, and perhaps something like this could be a small building block towards helping that process as well. So those are my very brief thoughts, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask anybody who's attending the meeting today if they've got any questions they would like to ask Andrew. Councillor Rooney.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Hi, Andrew. Yeah, I think this is a really good positive step, and I particularly like the plain English approach. I do think the document as it is really dense, and I know it does have to have a lot of that information in. I wondered, does it actually flow, or would you be changing the order in which the information is produced? Because when I go to look at it, I end up going into lots and lots of different sections. And in terms of how it's presented, will we have links so that if you see a paragraph or a section and it's page 30, you click on that and it takes you immediately to page 30? Would it have that function as well?
Yeah, that's definitely doable in the digital version, Councillor Rooney, yes. And that's how I would envisage it would work. You know, if we decide to go with a summary, clearly there's always going to be the need for further reading on specific sections. So that's how it would have to be set up. In terms of the structure and the flow, I've got to be honest, I've not given, you know, a great deal of thought to that yet before discussing it today.
Councillor Lowy.
Thank you. Yes, Chair. I agree with what's been said so far, that we do need a very much simplified document, and I understand the need for plain English clearly. I think that in order to simplify the reading of such a document, aspects of the legal wordings, etc., could be on appendices. So I think, as you say, Andrew, that the basic elements of the Constitution could be on several pages of A4, on condition that we have the links. And I think the more complex aspects of the legal requirements should be almost separate, you know, because they're the ones that might be the most challenging for people to read and understand. So I think we need some separation, and as Councillor Rooney said, we need clear links. And I think the proofreading and the flow of this document to make it work are key aspects of what we need to do. It ought to be accessible to everyone, otherwise it's not really a viable constitutional document, is it, if everyone can't read and understand it? That's their entitlement, in fact.
Thank you. Did you want to reply to that, Andrew?
I don't think so, Chair, no, to take all that on board, absolutely.
Sylvia?
Yes, Chair. Just to reiterate really what Denise was saying in that I have been going through the Constitution as it is and trying to bookmark and link and mark where those links automatically flow. But you're right, it does need pulling together. So questions for, say, executive need to sit with the executive scheme and the protocols, and what the executive portfolios are all need to sit in one area. So I think it is possible to actually start to group them and then make the links as well where there's a slight reference to them. So we will be working closely with Andrew to make sure those are there. But the Constitution is actually the key decision-making document and rules and protocols for the whole of the organisation. So it is a critical document, but we certainly need to make it more understandable by more people. But there are some, like you said at the beginning, certain things that we really need to make sure that they still are there. But even then, what is in there needs to also be clarified in some occasions as well, and not necessarily just the look and feel of it, but the contents as well. So we need to look at the contents as well as the look and feel of the Constitution. And again, looking at other local authorities for best practice, or not just changing like for like in a different format, considering our schemes and our protocols. And we're doing that as part of this phased review as we're going through the Constitution. So I will be bringing different parts, as we've agreed in our timetable previously. I'll be bringing the actual content for review, and Andrew will be looking at the formatting, if you like, of that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Are we having all questions now, or are we having questions when we come to item 5, which is the constitution update? Because I have a few questions, but I'm not sure where I should put them in.
I think this is just, this is just Andrew giving these review of the constitution and where they're going, what they're doing with it, how they're going to go forward with it. So I would think just keep your questions till the item 5 comes up. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. I have quite a lot of experience of proofreading for publication, so I'd be happy to volunteer my services for any proofreading requirement as we go through. So if that would be acceptable, I'd be quite happy to do that. Thank you.
Would you take that on board, Andrew, going forward, and Sylvia?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yep.
Chair.
Any more questions? No. Could I just ask one question? I might be a bit naive here, but when you've done this part, it's sort of like, I'm not saying idiot-proof, but it's easy enough to understand. Going forward, can you make all the other sections the same format to make it understandable? I know you said it's a long document. You tried to shorten it to make it sort of like, as Councillor Lowry says, people read documents and after so long they lose interest in it. It just sort of like gets too long. So is that your intention to do that with this document? To make it smaller in sizes that people can read and take it in?
It will be made on sections. It will be made in sections, but there are certain parts of it. So things like the rules and protocols, council procedure rules, those types of things have to be specific in their terminology, and they have to be specific in setting out the rules and regulations in detail, so that all members can abide by those rules when they're undertaking places in meetings. So basically it is an instruction manual for councillors and officers as well. So when we're making there are parts of it that have to be specific and detailed, and other parts that are just general, like Andrew was saying. There are probably the first 40 pages can be made in general terms and brief, whereas certain parts of it need to be in depth and in detail so that members understand all of the rules and the protocols, and they can challenge those any decisions in council meetings, and they know what those rules are. So that there will be a mix, I think, but we will certainly make it in sections so it's easier to read, and put the plain English test in where we can.
Right. So what we're saying today, what we've talked about, Andrew's going to go away and do these first 40 pages and bring it back to committee at another date.
Yeah.
So really, that's all you want our agreement today?
Yeah, it's just the process really of how you want us to go ahead with the structure of the constitution itself, rather than the content, which is what we will be dealing with in report in the section 5 of this agenda.
So can we, as a committee, agree that Andrew goes away and does his first 40 pages and brings it back to committee at a later date? Is that okay by everybody?
Agreed.
Anybody?
Yes, agreed.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andrew, for that update. We look forward to seeing the next report that you give this committee in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Item number 5, constitution update. I don't know who's getting this. Is it you, Sheila?
Sylvia, yeah.
Sylvia.
I'm going to present this on behalf of Charlotte. This is the general report where we have previously agreed in the past to prioritise parts of the Constitution for review. So we're doing a phased review of the Constitution over a year, and if members recall, we brought a timetable to the committee and agreed for certain parts of the Constitution to be reviewed. So we've put it into this format document where we've identified certain parts of the Constitution that are going to have some basic amendments made to it, and generally for the points of clarification. So you'll see in the report that we're looking to make alterations in this report to improve the workings of the council, or to help resolve some ambiguities or amend typographical or drafting errors. So in the report at 7.1, we're looking to make some minor amendments, and again, just to in the first action is to look at the recorded vote. And this is just to add the simple words. Can members see the report in front of them? Can they view that? So the first point is to look at just adding the words in red, so that the council tax or the issuing of the precept also requires a recorded vote. That is because members are required to declare any interests during those meetings, especially where they are behind in council tax for 2 months or more. And therefore, we just wanted to clarify in the Constitution that those two reports will also require a recorded vote. The second point in point 2 was about just amending the wording, to make it clear when a meeting can be cancelled. So again, just for clarity, we're seeking to put in the words, once the proper officer has given the notice of the summons of the meeting. So that's once the papers have gone out, that the chair or the vice chair in their absence, or the monitoring officer, if they're satisfied, can cancel a meeting if there is no appropriate business. It wasn't quite clear. The Constitution was previously silent on when a meeting has duly been convened. And what we're saying is we're just clarifying that a meeting will be duly convened once the papers have gone out. The third item was to include the role of a group leader's profile within the Constitution. We'd previously brought this to the committee. It was originally, I think, about 2 years ago. And the committee asked for some work to be done in developing a group leader's profile. And I've circulated that to group leaders for comments. And there was one member that came back and did have some concerns about how it applied to those groups that had independent members and didn't necessarily have the same internal workings as those groups from major political parties, and therefore didn't understand if they could fully implement the group leader profile. But on discussion, obviously group leaders are paid a special responsibility allowance, and they're paid a special responsibility allowance to act as a representative of their group, to act as a conduit for communications between officers and their members, and to bring issues of policy changes and recommendations, and for advising the monitoring officer of any of their wishes for membership of committees and substitutes and those types of things. So I've attached a draft role profile, and I was just hoping to get members' comments on that for inclusion in the Constitution, if there was any amendments that they'd like to be made here.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Question on page 9, section 2, cancellation of council meetings may not be cancelled or postponed after the meeting has been duly convened. I thought we might have an exception in there, such as when the chair and the monitoring officer thought that to continue the meeting would put attendees at risk. Obvious things that come to mind is fires, power cuts, someone taken ill in the chamber, that kind of thing, so that we've got an exception written in so people know what they're doing. And if we did have to do that, there'd be nobody trying to get into a discussion about the Constitution. That's one, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Rooney?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've got some, I don't have any comments on the report that was produced. I think that, you know, clarifies quite some things. I've got some comments on the group leader profile. Taking into account what Sylvia's just said, then the first point to provide the leadership of a political group. Now, do we need to be a bit more explicit about what the political group means? What does that phrase means? Because I would have said recognised, i.e. and in party political, but given what Sylvia has just said, I think, you know, something around the makeup of Middlesbrough Council could maybe be expanded in that bit to show what we mean. On point 3, to liaise with other local and regional representatives of the party. That doesn't make any sense for the independents because as far as I'm aware, they don't have local and regional representatives, unlike a party political group. Lib Dems, Tories and Labour would have these. So I'm not sure what that actually means. And on point 8, advise the mayor of the council of the group's positions on issues. Can we expand on that to maybe say something around presenting any alternative suggestions of policy or procedure? And I think those were my 3 points. Thank you.
Would you like to reply to that, Sylvia?
I think I agree with them all. I don't know if Charlotte's got any comments.
Charlotte?
Just a couple, please, Chair. On the point that Councillor Cooper made, I wonder were you envisaging a situation, Councillor Cooper, where the meeting's already started and we need to stop it, or a situation where in advance of the meeting some threats known about? Because obviously we have the ability when a meeting's already started to have an administrative motion to adjourn the meeting if there's a threat from somebody in the room or if there's a fire alarm and such. So if that was the situation we're envisaging, I think that's already catered for in the Constitution. And then the other point was picking up on Councillor Rooney's point to do with the, which paragraph was it, in the role profile, to number 3, to liaise with the local and regional representatives of the party. If we added on to that, where appropriate, would that still then be relevant to the role profile? So, for example, if it was the Labour group, then you know you would expect some liaison, wouldn't you, with the wider party? But if it was the MIG group, obviously it wouldn't be relevant. So, could we qualify that with the words "if appropriate" and then leave that in there?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yes, yes.
Right. I mean, I suppose it's thinking about in what circumstances would local and regional representatives be involved in the group leaders' responsibilities, because this is purely for Middlesbrough Council, you know, and we're talking about an entity that's aware, that may have an influence, may not. So I am quite confused on that particular section, that particular paragraph.
I see what you mean. Sorry,
yeah,
sorry,
but what I
you
actually
mean.
put
It's
initially
sort of,
was political party, where there is one. You know, you could do something as simple as that. Sorry,
yeah,
Charlotte,
you might want to. I was just going to say you might want to liaise with the wider Labour Party or the Conservatives, but you wouldn't necessarily want to feel like you had to, is the point, probably, isn't it? It's not an integral part of the role, perhaps, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Sylvia?
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Romney.
No, that's all right. I'm still thinking.
You're still.
I was just
Sylvia?
thinking that there are occasions, especially with the local government association, where the local government association does have regional meetings, and they do that on a group basis, but they also do it on independent basis as well. So they offer advice. I wonder if it's maybe not just party, but also party where relevant, or local government organisations or something similar, or other organisations along those lines.
Can I just come in there then and just
Yeah.
take it a little bit further to liaise with other local and regional representatives? Now I've just gone and lost my thread. As appropriate, I suppose it is the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're right, yeah, the LGA does have an independent section attached to it.
Yeah, there's an independent group, countrywide, isn't it? That's
With the
Yeah.
LGA there is, but there isn't
Yeah.
anything further. Yeah. Maybe if I can just leave you with that, with the
Yeah.
notes, and then
Yeah.
come back to us. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Has anybody else got any questions? So can I ask for somebody to move that we take this forward to council for approval? I think that's the plan.
Can I
Yeah,
ask that the amendments are circulated first?
Yeah.
If we've got any further comments before it goes that far. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure you could bring it back to the next committee and then take it forward to council. Councillor Lowy?
It must be the case, must it not? The other councils are in a similar position. So I imagine that their constitution must reflect this. And maybe we could look at some of the constitutional documents to see how they've dealt with this issue.
Did you want to say something, Sylvia? Yeah, I'm still up.
Obviously, these, when coming up with the role profile, I did look at other authorities in relation to developing the draft, but obviously they're all very similar, but obviously with more independent groups becoming more prevalent, not all parts of those role profiles are still relevant. So it is, I think, about just changing slightly the wording, but I have already looked at other local authorities and their role profiles.
So could I ask just for clarity, if we vote on this, what sort of like what you're going to put in the amendment that will satisfy Councillor Rooney and other members?
Well, on point 3, it was just coming up with the wording to make it so that it's it could be act as a representative for liaising with local and regional organisations or local government organisations, something similar along those lines.
That sounds okay. Yeah.
Is that okay for everybody else? So can I have a mover to endorse the above proposals in readiness for submission for full council to update to approve the updated to the constitution? Can we have a proposer for that?
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed.
Chair. Yes, Chair.
Is everybody in favour?
Yes.
Okay. So that's fine, Sheila. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
I don't think there's any more business. I think that's all we have to discuss. Unless somebody's got something to say, by all means. speak? No. Well, once again, thank you for attending this meeting today, and I wish you a very good afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.